يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا أصلح لنا شأننا كله لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم افتح لنا فتوح العارفين ووفقنا توفيق الصالحين. اللهم علمنا بذكر القرآن وذكر الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا. اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا أصلح لنا شأننا كله لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Can everyone hear me? Can everybody hear me? Inshallah. Let me know if you can hear me. Inshallah, you can hear me? You can text to the group or text on here on YouTube to let me know you can hear me, inshallah. Bismillah. Bismillah. Inshallah, you can hear me? Bismillah. 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 Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, good. Okay, so inshallah we're gonna do lesson 5. Welcome to lesson 5. We're gonna do ghusl, and there's some other issues that I added that have come up in the past. So first of all, I wanted to redress something from the last from wudu. By the way, is this better, or I'm actually going to turn off the light, and you let me know if it's darker, if that's better. One second. If this is better, then let me know that this is better. Is this better? Yeah, okay. So I just turned off all the lights. Okay, so this is something from wudu, and it's actually, I mean, it's relevant in general, but usually they talk about it before they talk about ghusl, and generally before actually they talk about wudu even. So I just wanted to mention this really quickly before we get into ghusl. So what happens if you discover something impure on you? A baby urinated on you, you found some filth, whatever. So if an impurity, meaning physical filth, is discovered on your body or your garment, so the first situation is you know exactly where it is. You just wash that area, so you don't have to wash the whole body. You don't have to wash the entire body. You don't have to wash the entire garment. So the first one is the easiest, right? The second one is you find some filth on a rug or the place on your prayer rug. Same thing. You wash the area. So the first situation is it's on your clothes or on your body, and the second one is on the place of prayer or on your prayer rug, for example. You just wash the area. The third situation, if you have doubt if it actually is on that area, you have doubt. But you're sure it's impure, you just don't know if it's, for example, on you. Then it is, what you do is, because you're sure it's impure, you sprinkle that area with water. You sprinkle that area with water. And doubt means 50-50. So you just sprinkle the area with water. For if you even have doubt whether it's pure or not, so you're certain something hit you and you don't know, or your place of prayer, you don't know where whether it's pure or not. So the basis of things is that it's purity. So if you have 50, if you're having doubt, meaning 50-50, whether it's pure or impure, the basis of things is purity, so which means you don't do anything. Now, if you're in the prayer, this last one is if you're in the prayer and you recall an impurity on you, so you knew you had it and you forgot, but you know it's on your garment or it's on your body, you're sure, you break the prayer, unless you think if you break the prayer and you go and wash it off or change your clothes, the time, whatever time you're in, remember we talked about the prayer times last time, and I can actually go over those slides really, really quickly. So whatever time you're in, so if you're in the mukhtar time or the elective time or the necessary time, which is the daruri, whichever time you're praying in, if that time is going to go out, if you go and wash that impurity, this is number 5 again, then you don't wash it and you pray with it on. Because in the Maliki, you give preference to the prayer time. And so if you have to pray with an impurity, you would have to if you're worried. If you're actually worried that the time will go out. Now, number 6 is if you prayed with an impurity forgetfully, right? You totally forgot about it. And then you didn't remember it after the salam. So it wasn't intentional. Right? And this is one of the blessings of being from the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, because there's a hadith about that one of the things that was lifted, the sin of what was lifted is al-khata'a wal-nisyana wa mastukri'a alayh. رفع لي عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان وما استكره عليه. So the Prophet ﷺ basically said the sin of forgetfulness and mistakes and what somebody was forced to do, the sin of that was removed. And so alhamdulillah, you prayed with an impurity forgetfully and you recalled, oh gosh, I had some urine on me and it was more than that, the dirham size, which we said is between a quarter, the size of a quarter or a half a dollar. It's more than that. And you recalled it after the salam. You repeat the prayer in its time. Anytime we say repeat the prayer in its time, it means the prayer is valid. Meaning you had a valid prayer because you're not responsible for forgetting. Alhamdulillah for that. Right? Especially in this day and age where we're in an age where we, there's just so much, especially being in the West, alhamdulillah, that with all these means opened up for us, it's just all this, one, there's a lot of temptation. Two, we've complicated our dunya, so we tend to forget. So, you repeat the prayer in its time, meaning it's only recommended to repeat it, because if the prayer was invalid, you would have to repeat it irrespective of if the time went out or not. So here you only repeat the prayer in its time. So anytime it says repeat the prayer in its time, it means you have a valid prayer and it's only recommended to repeat it if that time you're in, whether it's elective or necessary, does not go out. So what does that mean for a subh, for the dawn prayer? It's up to sunrise, meaning it would be recommended again. If this happened to you, you prayed with an impurity forgetfully and you recalled it after the salam, it would be recommended for you to repeat it for fajr up to sunrise. And after that, it wouldn't even be recommended. So after sunrise, it wouldn't be recommended. If it happened at dhuhr or at asr, up to isfirar. Isfirar is when basically when the Hanafis play their asr. So it's the later asr. So if the later asr comes in, then, and if you discovered the impurity either at dhuhr or at asr, then it's not recommended to repeat it. Again, this is all a recommendation, so your prayer is valid. And if it happened at maghrib or at isha, sorry, that's a little bit, I hope you can read that. It's recommended to repeat it up to a fajr. So it doesn't include, so once fajr time comes in and you had discovered an impurity after the salam, right? It's not even recommended to repeat it at that point. Inshallah, this is clear. Okay. Next one. Okay, here's something I added because sometimes this comes up with the people that have studied with non-Maliki. Sometimes they'll bring this up, or they've lived in a community where there's other, people following other schools or mixing and matching or not having studied traditionally. Sometimes there's a lot of confusion, and sometimes people don't know what's culture, what's one madhab. Sometimes people will tell me something. One sister was telling me the other day, I grew up with a Maliki, I think, grandfather, and Hanafi, somebody or the other. One other grandfather, I think, was Hanafi. And the way she showed me the Maliki prayer with the raising of the hands in the prayer, I said, the Malikis actually don't do that. So then she was confused then about what she actually grew up with. So sometimes people are just confused, and that's why if one always has to take classes, even if one has centuries of tradition, because people are not keeping up with their they're not constantly studying and reviewing and teaching their families and all that. There's just a lot of confusion. So this is something that comes up sometimes, especially not people picking up Sahih Bukhari and books of hadith, and they're not scholars, and so they're not supposed to do that, pick up books of hadith and study directly from them. But anyway, so sometimes people will say, well, why don't we extend our washing or wudu past the elbows, or extend to the neck, or so on. There's that hadith. And so I translated it roughly. Anyone who is able to extend the ghurra, that person should do so. And the hadith is in Bukhari. And ghurra, if you look it up, it actually means the white spot on the horse's face. So it's those radiant spots on the horse. And the Prophet ﷺ said that that's how he'll know the ummah. By the radiance of our limbs. So now, alhamdulillah, mashallah, we can't see it, but in the next world, that's what will be visible, because everything will be turned around in the next world. So, here the body is manifest and the ruh is hidden, but once we go into the other world, it's the other way around. So here, people are trying to beautify their bodies, and at the neglect of the ruh, like they'll feed their bodies perfectly, but they'll neglect the food of the ruh, of the spirit, and that's problematic, because then all this depression and anxiety and all this stuff happens because the ruh is not being fed, and so it's hurting. So, and in the other world, in the next world, the strength or the lack of strength of the ruh becomes manifest. So now that's hidden, and the strength or the weakness of the body is manifest. But in the other world, it'll be the other way around. So everything will be turned around. So inshallah, the way the Prophet ﷺ will know his ummah is by the radiance of the limbs. So the other ummahs, they used to have ghusl, and you see that in the seerah, that they talk about ghusl, but they don't have wudu. So alhamdulillah, this is one of the things that is special to this ummah. As far as I know, they don't have wudu, but they had ghusl. And the word that's used in this hadith is italatul ghurra. So a ghurra is against that white spot on the horse's face. So itala means to extend, like tawil is long, right? So itala means to extend. So anyone who's be able to extend the ghurra, like make it more radiant, right? It could be more or longer, should do so. So there's two meanings for that in the Arabic language, and this is mentioned in the commentary on Mukhtasar Khalil, the fatwa book of the Malikis. It can be always being in a state of purity. That's one of the meaning of italatul ghurra, which is in this hadith. And this is what's recommended in the Maliki school, is that, you do a prayer, whether it's nafil or fard, any prayer you do, after that it would be recommended to renew your wudu in accordance with this hadith. But extending the washing past the specific places would be makruh in the Maliki. So extending it past the limbs, extending it past, the face, going down to the neck, all that would be makruh in the Maliki. Because the Maliki took the other understanding. So I just wanted to mention that because sometimes this will come up. Okay, inshallah. So, and then let's get to ghusl. Okay, so what are the reasons for requiring a ghusl? So it's major ritual impurity, menstruation, lochial bleeding. Lochial bleeding is post-childbirth. So major ritual impurity or janaba, is of two types. Right? One is from intercourse, and that's the entrance of the glands. The glands of the male is that area that will typically get circumcised, of the penis into the inner folds of the woman's private parts, right? Into the inner folds. So there's entrance into the inside of the woman. That would require ghusl, even if a person didn't ejaculate. But just in it's just this much entrance would require a ghusl, right? Second, what's the other reason for major ritual impurity is a wet dream or nocturnal emission. So if there's no emission, there's no coming out of what's mani, which is the ejaculate, which comes out for men and for women. And we talked about that in some of the other classes. It will come out for men and for women. But somebody had a dream where they're having sexual intercourse or something, but there's no sexual emission. There's nothing owed. And it's important for somebody who has boys and they're reaching that age that they should talk to them about that so they know what when they hit puberty. If there's seminal emission, again, it can be male or female, but the actual quality of the ejaculate is different for males and females, but both can have an orgasm and both can ejaculate mani. If one sees it on one's clothes and one does not know when it occurred, what do? You have to do ghusl, right? And one must repeat the prayers since one slept last. So you just assume it was from your last sleep. It's rare in women. I was looking this up because I teach a Sunday class, Sunday afternoon class, and I was trying to see, because we talk about menstruation, but I wanted to see what, should I discuss nocturnal emissions with these girls or not? Because they're 12, 13 in that age. And they were saying that it's rare in girls, but it's obviously a lot more common in boys. So somebody who has boys reaching puberty, they should talk about it so they know when they've reached adulthood. And in the Maliki, we said that there's other signs of reaching adulthood, for example, coarse hair. And we did that slide. And by any one of those signs, inshallah, I'll pull it up again, one would reach adulthood, even if one hadn't gotten one's menstrual cycle or one hadn't had a wet dream. By one of those other signs, one can reach adulthood. But in the Hanafi school, I was asking one of my teachers, she said no, for the female it would be menstruation, and those other signs, she wouldn't reach adulthood unless she got her menstrual blood, or 15 years. If you have doubts of these last two bullets, and then I'll go back to the slide on the other signs of reaching adulthood. if you have doubt whether it's money is, again, the ejaculate that comes after an orgasm. So it's after a wet dream, right? Or after having intercourse and you had the ejaculate come out. Madi is what is the lesser sexual fluid. And so madi requires wudu only, and it's going to be after foreplay or fantasizing. Obviously, fantasizing about other than one spouse would not be allowed. So if one has doubt, 50-50, is it mani, which would break my ghusl, or is it madi, which would only break my wudu? You must do ghusl, because it's 50-50. You broke your ghusl, doubt. So doubt about tahara in the Maliki, it breaks ghusl. Now what happens, and again, there's a difference opinion between the schools. So if you did ghusl, right, somebody who had intercourse, or they had a wet dream, so they had intercourse and maybe no ejaculate came out, or they had a wet dream, or ejaculate came out after due to pleasure, normal pleasure, from whom sexual pleasure is normally derived. So they took a shower, and say after intercourse, they took a shower, and then money came out. The ejaculate came out. The ejaculate actually came out after the pleasure was gone, right? Because the pleasure was gone. So if it comes out and you've taken a shower, then you only have to do wudu from it. Or some of it came out, somebody had a wet dream, or they were, there's foreplay, and then they actually ejaculated. And even though there was no intercourse, but they ejaculated, male or female. And some ejaculate came out, and they did ghusl, and then more came out later, but there was no pleasure associated with it. The rest of the ejaculate that comes out, that only breaks wudu. It doesn't break your ghusl, because there's no pleasure associated with it. And maybe I can pull up some of that. I'll pull up the slide on reaching adulthood, because it's different in the Maliki. Because when we were doing this, some of the sisters were obviously, it's usually, it's different in the other schools. So some of the sisters obviously were not. Here, signs of puberty. Okay, and I think I thought I made a. Okay, no, here it is. Okay. Signs of puberty. Appearance of any one, and I asked Sheikh Sadiq about this. One marks the onset of puberty. So then the person is baligh, if they're balighs and they have their sound intellect, they're responsible for their actions. So the first one is faraq al-arnaba, and it's the fleshy part of the nose becomes distinct. And honestly, I can kind of see it a little bit in the girls. And I was talking to Sheikh Sadiq about that, and he said he can notice it in the boys. And so, when your child gets close to that age, you kind of have to ask. The ghilad al-hanjara, I think it's the epiglottis. It's the enlarging of the bone, which is typically called the quote-unquote Adam's apple. I don't like using that phrase for obvious reason. And a deepening of the voice. A deepening of the voice is going to be specific to men, right? So this is one, right? This is all one. The thickening of the epiglottis, enlarging of the bone, deepening of the voice, right? But the bone will enlarge apparently in women also, but obviously the voice is going to deepen generally only in men. Coarse pubic hair. So that's, if you're not, ask your child that, you have to explain it to them and just tell them ahead of time that if they know, once they see one of these signs on their body, because you're not obviously allowed to look at that area of theirs, then they've reached adulthood, and explain to them ahead of time what adulthood is, and then explain to them some of the signs, all these signs. Stench of the axillary area, right? So the underarms. Enlargement of the breasts generally is going to be in women. Ejaculation, we talked about that. And then for menses, pregnancy, that's specific to women. If none of these signs are there, then if they reach 18 lunar years, so it's 18 lunar years. I keep editing these slides, and there's always room for editing, and that's just proof that only Allah's book is perfect, right? There's no mistakes. 18 lunar years, in the absence of the other signs, then they've reached adulthood. You wonder where in the West they get 18, right? 18, they're an adult here. SubhanAllah. I wonder where that comes from. Okay. By the way, just a quick note. These 7 acts, if you do them, you have to complete them. So inshallah, we're going to be doing the prayer soon. But, sometimes people think, oh, I'm in a nafil prayer, I can get out of it anytime I want. But certain acts, if you start them, you have to complete them. Like prayer, fasting, any kind of fast. Obviously, Ramadan, yes, but any type of fast, even a non-Ramadan fast. Hajj, once you start it. Umrah, once you start it. Ukuf or i'tikaf, right, in Ramadan. And tawaf, which is circumambulation, or praying behind an imam. Once you start praying behind an imam, you have to complete it. And so you have to be careful about when you start the prayer, that you have to know that you can't just walk out anytime. So just prepare yourself for an act that you just can't leave like that. Okay, let's go back to where we were. Okay, so the rest of it is short. I wanted to make it a shorter class today. We had a really long class last time. So I went over some thoughts last time about waswasa, and this is a good slide. So anybody who didn't watch last week's session, they should look at the slide, because this is from our Aqidah class, but these thoughts, they occur, they're relevant to, all to our daily lives, especially wudu and tahara. When one's learning to practice it, and especially with the rules, sometimes there's a lot of waswasa, and that's why I mentioned it last time. Okay, I had mentioned that I would also go over I made these charts for the prayer, for prayer time, so this is from last time. So zawal is when dhuhr comes in, and this is the preferred or the elect time of dhuhr, right? And then once asr comes in, which is the early asr on the chart, this is the preferred time of asr, and this is the necessary or the daruri time of dhuhr. So you can't delay dhuhr till asr comes in without a valid excuse, and you have to ask what a valid excuse is. And then dhuhr and asr, the necessary time, so don't delay it into the red without a valid excuse. They both share a necessary time, and it goes up till sunset, right? So you can't delay till this last time without an excuse again. But it's not a qada prayer. It's not a make-up prayer. The daruri, it's sinful to go into the daruri time, but it's not. It's an ada. It's the prayer, sinful prayer prayed if it's not without a valid excuse, but it's not a make-up prayer. Okay, this is again from last time. So here's sunset, so it's going this way. So maghrib, and the preferred time is from sunset. When you're sure it's sunset, that's also when you break your fast. So wait a few minutes past the charts, right? And maghrib time is generally really short. So the elect time goes, the stronger opinion is that this elect time is the time it takes for you to fulfill the conditions of the prayer and pray the prayer. So put on your clothes, do your wudu, do your, do the iqama. For women, it's recommended to do the iqama for women, and pray the prayer. There's an opinion that the preferred time of maghrib goes to Isha. There is that opinion, and it's not a weak one. But don't delay it up to Isha, because it's makruh, because it was the action of the Jews. That's what's mentioned in the books, that it's the action of the Jews to delay it until the stars were bright. So, and then once Isha comes in, the necessary time for Maghrib is in. So it's still not a make-up time for Maghrib, but it's a necessary time. So don't delay it till Isha comes in. And now the preferred time for Isha is in, and this is the first 1/3 of the night. So the night hours are from sunset all the way up till before Fajr. So sunset is 6 o'clock, all the way up till Fajr is 6 a.m. That's 12 hours in the night. Divided that by 1/3, right? So that's 4. So Isha, Maghrib will say at 6 o'clock. To 6 o'clock, add 4 hours. So at 10 o'clock, at 10 o'clock would be the end of the first 1/3 of the night. Because it's, 10 o'clock would be, in this case, the end of the first 1/3 of the night. So for the Malikis, you would have prayed Isha before the end of the first 1/3 of the night. And then the second 2/3 of the night, I made it in black. So after 10 o'clock, for example, in this case, up to Fajr coming in, not including Fajr coming in. This is the necessary time for Isha. So this is just a review from last time. Inshallah, this is clear? Okay, so inshallah, and then there's any questions you'll ask. Okay, that was for last time. Okay, this we did. Okay, the last thing we're going to do today is ghusl. Okay, so here, in the books, it's really nice. They'll list the obligations of ghusl. So if you're really stuck, and you're really short on time, you would just have to do the obligations. So you get your ghusl in and you get your prayer in before the time goes out. Right? Because remember, you can't extend into the necessary time without a valid excuse. So, which means if your time is so short to where if you did the sunnahs of the ghusl or wudu, you would go into the second time, the necessary time, you have to leave those extra acts. So it's good to know what the obligations are. So making an intention at the beginning, meaning when you wash the private parts, that's the beginning of your ghusl. So intend to remove the greater ritual impurity. So you're intending to remove the greater ritual impurity, right? And that's when you wash at the beginning. And subhanAllah, one of the shaykh was saying it's really difficult. He was just talking about actions in general, that it's really difficult to start to make your niyyah right when you start the action. And subhanAllah, and actions are by intention according to the hadith. So in general, outside of these acts of worship require an intention. But in general, to get a reward for even drinking water, and things that are of themselves permissible, one needs to make an intention. And so it's just one of the ways that they say, you move up in ranks is by making your intention, particularly if it's at the beginning of the action. So when you start drinking water. So if you don't do it at the beginning, just do it when you are drinking water. Ya Allah, my body has a right over me, and if I drink water, then I'll have more energy to worship you, or or the like. Sometimes, or if I'm eating, sometimes I'll catch myself, I forgot to make my intention. I did my bismillah, but I forgot to make my intention. Okay, rubbing is mururu shay ala shay. Mururu shay, marra means to pass. So mururu, passing of something over something. For example, a limb over a limb. So when you're, so it's not like rubbing back and forth the way we understand it, although that's typically how it's translated. So, as you pass the water over your body, and then you rub the hand over the limbs that the water is being poured upon, or was poured upon. That's 2, so that's also an obligation. 3, covering the entire body with water, ensuring that water reaches the creases, folds of the body. So you have to make sure it gets into the creases, so the folds, of the private parts, the inner folds, you have to get in there. Any creases like the knees, right? If you have, getting old like me, have creases on your face. And then you also have to make sure that for example, in wudu, you only wash your ear, right? You only do wipe your ear. But in ghusl, you would actually wash your ear. So, and let's get to the sunnah so I can explain how you, inshallah, you do your ear. Or those of you who are taking this again, inshallah, it's a good review. Okay, so the sunnah, and then I have a slide actually where I go over the steps in order. So if you're stuck, just do the obligations. But if you're not stuck, you shouldn't leave the sunnahs. Okay, washing the hands up to and including the wrists. This is a sunnah. Rinsing the mouth. So in general, if you just wash your whole body and you didn't do a wudu after you washed your private parts, your ghusl is still valid, right? But just to do it, you know how you wash your hands up to including the wrists at the beginning of your wudu? So likewise in the beginning of ghusl. But just like in wudu, in wudu you will re-wash your hands. Right? But here you would not. So here whatever the wudu that you do at the beginning of your ghusl, those limbs of wudu, you don't repeat them in the rest of the ghusl, because it's all ghusl. Because the first thing you do is you wash your private parts, and that's where you make your intention, and then you do the wudu, and then the rest of the body. So it's all included in the intention of ghusl. But he specifically singles out the sunnahs here. So washing the hands up to including the wrists, right? So this is after you've done your private parts. Rinsing the water, and you have to rinsing the mouth, and be careful if you're fasting, right? We're coming up on fasting month, so you don't swallow water. Lightly sniffing water up the nose. Do this thoroughly if you're not fasting. Lightly blowing water out of the nose. They were saying, I was sitting in I was attending one of Sheikh Samir's class, and then he was doing the inner aspects of wudu. He was like one of the awliya. In his book, they talk about the inner aspects. And they were saying one of the hikmas, one of the wisdoms of, doing the nose. Of course we do it because we're told to do it, and the Prophet ﷺ did it. But they say one of the wisdoms is it's to humble the human being, subhanAllah. Lightly blowing out of the nose. So you sniff water up with the right and take it out with the left. So you blow out with the left hand. And then washing the canal of the inner ear. So what you would do is you would tilt your head, right, to where it's tilted sideways. So your ear that you're going to wash is parallel to the ground. It's not up. Your head is not up. It's down. Right? So it's parallel to the earth. And you take a cup of water, a scoopful of water in your hand, and you move the hand with the water up to your ear. Keep your head tilted and make sure the water goes into the outer ear, and don't lift up your head yet. Just move your hand away and then let the water drain. So your head is the entire time the ear is parallel to the ground. And the reason we were taught to do it this way so that you don't get water into your ear. And then once you have your water in there, make sure you get the creases of the outer ear and a little bit, and the just put your finger into the pinne, the ear canal. Right? What you can easily reach. And that's what I meant by specific way to do this. And then you make sure you squeeze water through the braids, where we're going to go over the head in a minute. But because you have to get every hair wet in the Maliki. Okay. And so these are the recommended acts. So again, the order, if you are really stuck, do just the obligations. If you have more time, do the sunnahs. And if you have even more time, it shouldn't take more than 10-15 minutes to do ghusl, then do the recommended acts. This third bullet here. That's a recommend. So it's the mustahabbat, basically. Okay. Actually, this is not in the This is not in here. This is outside of a ghusl. Sorry, my mistake. This is outside of ghusl. Okay, a note about ghusl is limit the water usage. The Prophet ﷺ would use a sa', which is about 2 liters. The Malikis say no specific amount because somebody could be really big and they need more. Is that, inshallah, that's clear? But what is recommended also is washing the private parts and performing wudu before having intercourse again. So if somebody goes back and they want to have intercourse again, it's recommended for them to wash the private parts and just do wudu. This wudu won't lift the ritual impurity because they're in major ritual impurity, but it's recommended to do it before they have intercourse again. Unless they do the full ghusl before they have intercourse again, but they may not. Or before going to sleep. So if they need a ghusl, but they're going to go to sleep and then do ghusl before at Fajr because they did their Isha already. They can sleep, although, it's not the best thing, but then they should wash at least their private parts and do ghusl and do wudu. Even though this wudu does not lift anything, it's called ta'abbudi. It's a devotional wudu because it's reported from the Prophet ﷺ. So, and this type of wudu is not nullified by the typical nullifier. As the things that typically nullify your wudu, like using the restroom and things like that, it won't. This specific wudu doesn't nullify it. But it's nullified by intercourse. So if somebody has intercourse a second time and, they want to sleep, they should do this type of wudu again. It's a regular wudu, but it just has a special ruling. Now, somebody's in a state of greater ritual impurity and they don't want to take ghusl, right? And they can, right? So for them, their ruling is different than that of somebody who's menstruating. Because a person who's menstruating, generally, they can't take a ghusl, right? They can't get out of that state. So for somebody who's in greater ritual impurity, they're in janaba, right? They can read an ayah or the like for protection because they're not doing ghusl before sleeping. So they could read Ayatul Kursi, they could read the 3 protective surahs, the last 3 surahs of the Quran. Seems like this is a little bit blurry. Inshallah, you can read this. Okay. So last 3 surahs of the Quran, the 3 protective surahs, Qul Huwallahu Ahad and Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq and Qul A'udhu Birabbin Nas. It's a ruqya, right? It's done for protection. And I may read ayahs you can read ayahs to seek proof for a ruling, like there's a scholar who wants to look up a ruling for whatever action, and they need to read it, but they're in a state of greater ritual impurity, they can read that. Or anyone else, student of knowledge, but you're doing it for knowledge. It's not for worship. Somebody in a state of greater ritual impurity, whether it's a man or a woman, whether you're in your menstrual cycle or you're in janaba, you can't pass through a masjid. You cannot pass through a masjid. And according to all 4 schools, if you cannot sit in a masjid if you're in a state of greater ritual impurity, whether it's menstruation, even if it's a class, or whether it's greater ritual impurity. Now, as far as a woman goes, we talked about in earlier classes how she can, she's able to recite Quran, and we went over the details of that. Now, once her cycle cuts off, and she's able to perform ghusl, she's like the one in greater ritual impurity. Because she's able to do ghusl, because the preventative is gone. That which prevents her ghusl from being valid, it's gone. Her cycle has ended. Now she can't recite Quran until after she's done with her ghusl. So she's just like the one in greater ritual impurity. Inshallah, this is clear? Okay, last thing. Okay, here's the recommended order. This is just recommended. It's a recommended order for ghusl. So what do you do? The first thing, sorry, I said you wash your private parts and then your hands. You actually do your hands first. You wash your hands to the wrists 3 times. You say the Bismillah. Obviously, if you're not in a place where there's a toilet, and you intend to do the sunnah, right? And you wash your private parts front and back with the intention of lifting janaba, major ritual impurity. Um, and then you perform a regular wudu. Here, in this regular wudu, you would redo your hands. This is a regular wudu. And remember, you've done your intention in number 2, so you don't renew your intention here. It's a wudu that's part of your ghusl. But you redo your hands. You do a regular wudu. You wash your ears here. Remember I explained how to wash your ears? Normally in wudu you would wet wipe your ears, but here you actually wash them because then you won't go back to them when you do the rest of your ghusl. And then this is again, you're ending your wudu, you're going to wash your feet. You can either wash your feet now or right at the end the last thing you do when you wash your when everything else is done and before you get out of the shower. If you haven't done your feet, do them now. They're both dominant opinions. You know, some people say it's because oops, hopefully you can see this. Whether it depends on whether the water is standing or not. But anyway, either one that you do is fine. And then you rub water into the roots and wash the head 3 times. So they say, like they'll mention in the fiqh books, to get water, like to dribble water onto the head. And they say one of the reasons, subhanAllah, for that is because if you pour water on the head right away, it can shock the body. So you just do it gently, right, subhanAllah, and let the body get used to, the temperature of the water, because, if you pouring water in the head is different than washing your hands. And so you just rub water into the roots so you get it ready, and then wash the head 3 times and do takhleel, which is rubbing, right? Make sure we said get water into your roots and each hair. So if you have your braids, make sure you squeeze the braids so that you're sure that water will enter the braids and each hair. And then pour water over the right side 1 time and wash the upper arm, underarm, entire right side. Entire right side is considered 1 limb. Wash front to knee and back, right, 1 time. And now you do the left side. Pour water, left side, wash upper arm, underarm, entire left side is considered 1 limb. Wash the front to the knee and back, right? And then wash the right calf, then left calf. And then if you haven't done your feet, do your feet here. But if you have done your feet, then you're done once you do your calves. Hope you can see that. And and you're done. And come out and say the shahadatain, ashhadu la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna rasulullah. And it's recommended to do 2 rak'ah of like wudu after your, because you did ghusl, so that includes your wudu. And it's recommended. Or you can, when you're doing your fard, you can intend the first 2 of the fard. I'd ask Sheikh Sadiq about that. The first 2 of your fard also count as the nafil of your wudu. I've seen Sheikh Sadiq, like he'll go wudu and he'll do right away. He does 2 nafil of wudu. And I said, is it okay if you do it later? He said, yes, it's fine. Obviously, it's not the same as doing it right away, but it's, inshallah, it still counts as doing the 2 nafil. And the Prophet ﷺ, the reason it's recommended is the Prophet ﷺ saw Sayyidina Bilal he heard his footsteps. I don't know. I think he saw him also in Jannah, and he asked him about some of his actions. I forget the exact hadith. And Sayyidina Bilal said probably the most hopeful action he felt after Islam was that every time he made wudu, he would go to do two rak'ah of wudu, basically. And so that's why it's recommended to do it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك صلى الله على سيدنا وعلى وصحبه وسلم تسليما. Oh, one more thing. Okay. A question, sometimes this comes up, seeking pleasure and you're in a great state of menstruation. So, seeking pleasure between the navel and the knees. It is impermissible to have intercourse or seek pleasure from the area between the navel and the knees. That's Mukhtasar Khalil, that's a fatwa book, and its commentary. So, in the commentary of the fatwa book, it says, even if you seek pleasure between the navel and the knees, even though there's a barrier, like an izar between the navel and the knees, you can't seek pleasure in that area, even if it's covered. Of course, above the navel and below the knees, that's permitted, even without a barrier. But here I'm just talking about the area between the navel and the knees. If it's covered with a thick barrier, is it permitted? And so he said that there's two strong opinions about that, and he said that the dominant one of the two is that it's permissible as long as there's like a thick barrier between the navel and the knees. The husband can seek pleasure over the barrier between the navel and the knees. And Sheikh Sadiq had asked him, he said there's two opinions, seeking pleasure over a thick barrier. The apparent meaning of the hadith is that if one is wearing something that is tightly worn and covers the area, then it is permissible. He said the proofs for both are strong. So if somebody's worried that they could go into haram, then obviously for them their ruling would be different. But if they have that much self-control that they would not extend past the limits, then this is for them. But she has to take ghusl before pleasure is directly sought between the navel and the knees without a barrier. So that's just the last point I wanted to mention. So you know yourself. So if you know, or you know your spouse, you know that they won't be able to stop at the limits, then you have to stop them. That's your responsibility, and theirs, of course. جزا الله عنا سيدنا صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله جزا الله عنا سيدنا صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله جزا الله عنا سيدنا صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت. So I hope you have a blessed rest of the 15th of Sha'ban. Let me know if there's any questions, or you can text me. Or text the group, inshallah. And I'm going to try to do, most likely I'll do another session next week or the week after. We'll do one more session before Ramadan comes in, inshallah. I'm trying to do as much as we can before Ramadan comes in, inshallah. So hopefully we can at least finish all of tahara, all of purity, before Ramadan comes in. So we have tayammum to do, and tayammum is really important in the Maliki school. And wiping over like bandages, wounds. I made some slides for it because I just feel that comes up so much. Somebody being in the hospital, they had surgery, things like that. What are the rulings of that? So I do want to cover that before we go into prayer, inshallah. Okay, so assalamu alaikum. See you either next week or the week after. And I'll post to the group. Jazakallah khairan for attending. Jazakallah khairan.